Now, the Wellness Hour on CNA938.
Welcome to the Wellness Hour with me, Hui Wong. Now, today we'll be talking about something that hits close to home for many, the closure of the Projector. For years, the Projector wasn't just a cinema. It was a place where people gathered to watch indie films, discover hidden gems, and make new friends. It was what some call a third space, not home, not work, but a place where community and belonging were built. So when news broke that the Projector would be closing its doors, many grieved, shared memories online, and wondered what would take its place. And this raises a bigger question. Why do we feel such deep sadness when we lose spaces like this? And to help us unpack these emotions, I'm joined today by Sara-Ann Lee, a clinical psychologist from the psychology practice. Good to have you with us, Sarah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me today.
Now, many Singaporeans are describing the closure of the Projector as a punch to the gut. From a psychological perspective, why do we grieve the loss of spaces?
So if I can ask everybody to just consider, right, how our brain functions, it's a little bit like a hard disk where memories are stored, and these salient associations are what gets activated when you think about a particular location. So for example, if you think about a place like the Projector, perhaps people might remember having conversations with others that you met during a particular event, watching a film that you thoroughly enjoyed, or even celebrating a special occasion there. So the common point, if you can notice, is that the valence, what we refer to as the emotional charge of these associations, tend to be towards the positive direction. Meaning to say, repeated positive valence experiences actually deepens the connection and emotional attachment that one may feel even towards a particular location. And like you mentioned previously, right, a lot of people found that this was a place that they felt was heavily linked to their identity and meaning. It was important cultural and communal space, and I actually quote from their website. Right, they actually mentioned that since opening its doors in 2014, the Projector has been more than a place to watch movies. It has been a cultural and event space where artists, filmmakers, audiences gathered to experience cinema, creativity in different forms, and to engage with diverse communities. So beyond that, what we also do know is that it really goes beyond just the concept of a physical venue. Right? It really functions as an emotional anchor if multiple positive associations have been formed in any of these individuals' mind. And if you think about positive associations like emotional anchors, so if you think about an anchor, when an anchor is pulled up, people do feel quite lost, right? Or they might start to grieve the loss of some of these places. And when the positive valence in this case is multifaceted, so if we think about watching a film, there could be pleasure involved in enjoying a film. There was social reward because it was also a place that built community, cognitive engagement through the sharing of ideas, right? And identity affirmation, being part of this creative or this place that people felt welcome. This community also provides this sense of belonging. So it might be experienced, as losing a part of yourself and what is meaningful, feeling safe, feeling connected. And the loss, I think interestingly, may also be experienced in the form of, if let's say certain individuals work in the creative industry, they might also feel like if this is a foreshadowing of what it might be like to work in a very competitive environment where rental and a lot of practical considerations come into place, they might also feel that loss in that manner.
Mm-hmm. And what role does nostalgia play in shaping these strong feelings as well? And how can we honor nostalgia without getting stuck in it?
So we kind of go back to the brain again a little bit, right? There is this set of interconnected brain regions called the default mode network. And this plays a key role in retrieving what we call episodic memories. And this just refers to personal experiences and events that are tied to particular times and places. So think about if you would remember going there, who did you go with, what film did you watch, right? And these past experiences actually become building blocks for future events. This becomes important when people think about the concept of self and identity. Also important in maintaining a coherent internal narrative, right? So the meaning of nostalgia refers to a sentimental longing or wistful affection for a period in the past. And nostalgia for some people may feel like very warm and comforting. It might remind us of very meaningful experiences we have had. But like you mentioned, it might also have the ability to make people feel stuck if there is an over-association with the loss of joy and safety that was experienced in the past, and this might prevent individuals from engaging fully and experiencing with what is happening in their present. So what I might ask people to do if they do feel caught up in this is to encourage a little bit of reflection. What is causing, I think, some of these feelings to emerge that they do sense? And this might help to bring a little bit more clarity and awareness that goes beyond the uncomfortable feelings or overwhelming emotions that one may feel. Right? It might also be important, right? I think this was something that I did see online. People actually gathered to mark the occasion, right? They did meet for one last time, have fun, drink, remember. So this remembering and re-experiencing, right? Organizing things like community gatherings for other like-minded individuals. Many, like you mentioned earlier, have also turned online to share memories of the place, posting videos, photos, and all of that. This could also serve to be a source of inspiration or motivation, right? Being able to inform of what individuals may be looking for or seeking out in order to continue this journey rather than focus on the point about not being able to replicate it fully or just to focus on the loss of this physical space.
These expressions are also a form of closure for them so that they can move on, right? And how is the concept of a third space important for mental health and well-being?
So the idea of a third space actually coined by a sociologist, with the first being home and the second space being work, ideally is a place that allows for informal social interactions. So if we take into account perhaps the landscape in Singapore, we might be thinking about places like hawker centres, coffee shops, libraries, community centres, or even cinemas like the Projector. And these third spaces actually act as what we call societal glue. Right? So if you notice, the common thing about all these places is that ideally they provide what we call a neutral, accessible, and informal setting that allows individuals to be themselves, relax, and connect with others. So very different from, like you say, work. Right? You might require some qualifications to work in a specific location, but you probably don't require any kind of qualifications or special circumstances in order to go to any hawker centre, libraries, coffee shops, and things like that. So the importance about these third spaces really is that it provides a safe space, both physically and psychologically, right? So if you think about it, and I quote again from the website, the Projector actually prides itself on saying that it was built and shaped in all forms by fans and collaborators to create a home for the creatives, misfits, and dreamers, home of the alternative voice. So it seems like what these third spaces are actually able to provide for people is this sense of camaraderie that individuals feel, and they appreciate that. This also helps to combat things like social isolation by providing ample opportunities for social connection and community, providing lively and diverse environments so that this might also promote and encourage creativity and innovation. And this might make the social experience perhaps a lot more rich. Right? We've also identified that this sense of identity and belonging becomes important for how individuals make meaning in life, to develop individual but also collective identities. Third spaces also function as a break from demands of work and home life. So if you notice, perhaps really quite different, the focus is on promoting things like relaxation, enjoyment, engagement, and all of this is positively associated with good mental health, helps to reduce feelings of isolation, boosts mood, and if you think about it, helps with better emotional regulation. So a colleague actually shared how he remembered going there for the first time, and he talked about how he felt that he discovered a hidden gem. Like, it was such a cool place, and he speaks fondly even about the memories created there, and I think that's what a lot of the individuals actually do feel. Right? I also understand from doing some research online that they also provided event rentals for events, things like people have even taken wedding photo shoots over there. So if you think about it, right, these third spaces, especially like the Projector, really provided, I think, people with a space where they feel like I can have a bit of a break from something more mainstream, but it's still something that still remains relatively accessible.
So how can individuals find or create new third spaces that offer a similar sense of belonging and connection?
I think it takes quite a lot of intentionality, right? But I would ask everyone to consider the importance is to remember that it's not about replicating wholesale. So we're not thinking of creating a different place where we just take everything that the Projector was and we copy and paste and we put it in another location and we call it maybe the same thing, right? If we think back about why these places become so meaningful to us, right, it really transcends that being just a physical space. The physical space perhaps just really acts like a physical placeholder. It provides a place for people to gather. But actually, what this place really provided was much more than just a gathering space, right? So the function, what function did this third space have for each of the individuals in their lives? Did it meet some of their needs? Right? What are you searching for, or what are you wanting to build in seeking out perhaps a community that would make you feel the same as what you did feel there? Right? So I think actively searching for opportunities, asking questions like, where are like-minded people gathering now? Are there some interest groups online that I might be able to join through word of mouth? Maybe I can ask around, where are people going now? And perhaps I might be able to take part in some of these events, activities, or just go down to have a look at the space. Right? Also considering whether I could be, part of that societal glue, like we said. If this is something really meaningful for me, is it in me if I would want to create an opportunity to bring people together? Right? Organizing, facilitating gatherings or meetings, or it could also be starting a chat group for discussions where people put perhaps certain creative related events there, or any kind of events that they think the community might have interest in. And I think that's how the discussion doesn't die out, right? But in fact, it becomes a continuation or an extension of that. So reflecting in the experience. So let's say you go to a new location, right? Did you feel safe and welcome in this new space and group? The important part, I think, in creating new third spaces would be, if you remember earlier on I mentioned, there should be low barriers to entry. It should be a place that's very accessible for people, that promotes some sort of regularity. You might be able to go there often. You feel welcome, or there's a diverse community there such that it promotes very open-minded kind of considerations. And also, perhaps the important part is that there's no obligation, that you can only be part of this if you come frequently enough, or if you join like a specific membership fee or things like that. I guess the last thing that I have to mention is that I think the spirit of the projector, or any of these spaces that people mourn or grieve the loss of, is really not just tied to the physical space or any building, right? It lives in the people who made it meaningful, the community that they created together. And who knows, when these individuals gather again, something new might emerge from it.
It's true, because like culture, society, values, it keeps evolving. And then
Yes.
people will find another avenue to
Yes.
express themselves, right? And I'm also thinking of current like third spaces like Scape, for instance, right? There's also a lot of youths gathering in those areas.
Yeah, and I think if you mention like Scape, what we also do know is that it has gone through quite a lot of transformation over the years, right? Being something that aims to target, I think, meeting the needs of the youth, right? So nowadays, I think at Scape, if I'm not wrong, there is also a community mental health area there where it encourages people that perhaps besides coming down to have fun, it's also about making it more accessible.
Yeah, and to just help each other along, a
Yeah.
community there, right? And do you think the communal aspect of mourning, people sharing memories of the projector online, helps people cope?
I think it does, right? It really does, because we often see that there's a lot of outpouring of some of these similar emotions that perhaps are echoed throughout many different people's posts, right? What do they remember? What do they miss? This is also how people continue to create, I think, meaning in their lives, right? And how they also choose to honor, I think, a part of their lives which they treasure a lot.
Yeah, I think it's great to be able to express these emotions rather than having it pent up, right? And then no outlet.
Yes, that definitely calls for healthier emotional expression. And if people are posting it, right, on social media and others chime in and share, that's where, like we said, who knows when new third communities might emerge based on these interactions.
And what does it say about us as humans that we can feel such deep connections to spaces?
Well, our brain, like mentioned, right, it's a very powerful tool for us, where the more we have experiences and the more it gets stored, the easier it is really that it gets activated. And I think people sometimes often underestimate how much spaces or how much experiences may actually have an impact, just depending on the emotional experience of what they express. So it could be also similar to different things like going on a holiday, right? Perhaps people might not experience, but they might think about that even many years after that, oh, that was a holiday that I really enjoyed. I really had fun. Perhaps this was how I felt during that time. It felt really very relaxing. And I think that becomes more impactful, right? Later on, when we reminisce, when we think back about it, compared to perhaps in that particular period in time.
It's fascinating that you brought that up, because like from our experiences, like, when we travel, we meet people, and these people actually, in the long run, some of them become close friends.
Yes.
And then you have very positive memories because of the positive experiences you have together.
Yes.
right?
For sure.
Yeah. And finally, what advice would you give to listeners who are struggling with the closure, not just the projector, but with the loss of other beloved spaces in their lives?
I guess it really goes back to thinking earlier on, like I mentioned, about the function, right? These spaces, even though they did serve a specific function to bring a certain group of people together, actually a lot of these spaces where people gather, you can find many spaces together anywhere else, right? I think the important part is really to seek out different opportunities to have a bit more understanding. What function did it really serve in my life? What am I missing out now on that I feel there's a need to start looking for something new? I think be open to different experiences and challenges, right? Rather than restricting yourself or feeling stuck in the feeling like, I don't think I'll ever be able to find something as good as this again, right? So the focus shouldn't be on replication. It should be on recreating something that perhaps is able to still target the same function, but doesn't have to be the same form.
Will there be certain groups of people who will react more negatively, to such incidents, like from your clinical practice?
Perhaps not specifically, but let's say, right, there was a group of people that perhaps really felt very deeply connected. Maybe because they might feel that might be the only safe space that exists for them, where they felt seen, heard, connected, safe. And perhaps in other spaces, they may feel like, oh, maybe my ideas are not as valued, or I don't really feel very seen or appreciated in some of these spaces. Perhaps that might have the propensity that they might feel a lot more from the loss of this space, which perhaps in that sense might be more meaningful and impactful in their lives.
Well, appreciate, you lending us your perspective on this.
Thank you very much.
And that was Sara-Ann Lee, a clinical psychologist from the psychology practice. And for the Wellness Hour, I'm Hui Wong on CNA 938.